Before we get things going, I want to establish that this is not a knock. Today in this video, we're going to be asking the question, is Brady Tkachuk overrated? And again, it's not a knock. He's a player who I sincerely hope has a great NHL future. His dad certainly did. His brother certainly is finding ways to make things work in the NHL, and I have no doubt that Brady Tkachuk is going to be able to do that too. But do I think he's worth 4th overall? 3rd overall? I don't really think so, and a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about here stem from just pure speculation. Of course, this is not going to be a scout's perspective or whatever. This is my own opinion, and Brady Tkachuk is a guy who, in my opinion, is a good player. Yeah, I'll say that. He's a good player, but there are a few different things within me that are sparking me to saying that he's not necessarily a top 5 talent. And there's a lot of deviations between Brady Tkachuk and where people think he's going to get drafted. The Hockey News, I know the Hockey News in particular, they have him at 3rd overall, above Filip Zadina, and looking at other scouting parties and whatnot, some have Brady Tkachuk as low as 9th overall, some have him in the 6 to 8 range, and if you go onto Twitter, there are a lot of hockey writers and whatnot that think that Tkachuk doesn't even deserve to be in the top 15. So obviously, Tkachuk is a player who isn't necessarily the most stable in terms of his draft stock. I mean, in terms of where he's going to get drafted, I believe he's going to get drafted probably in the 4 to 6 range. That's what I personally believe, but in my opinion, I don't believe he should be drafted there. I think he should be dropping down a little bit to 7 to 9. So, in my opinion, it is preposterous, just the general belief that Tkachuk deserves to go 3rd. And to me, it's because Tkachuk isn't necessarily the guy with the highest ceiling. He's the guy who is the safest pick, in my opinion. He's sort of like a Noah Dobson, in the sense that he's not necessarily the guy with the highest ceiling, per se, but the guy with the best bet to be a solid NHLer. And for Tkachuk in particular, I don't think solid NHLer means a guy who produces so many points and everything. He's just a guy who plays the game well. He's kind of like a tank, almost. And he's good at 2 ends of the ice, and he's a guy who's able to play a really physical game while also being able to get some points here and there. And I don't think that warrants a top 4 pick. I don't think that Tkachuk is a guy who necessarily deserves to be in that range, because I don't think his ceiling is as high as some of the other guys that could go in this range. And I know this is a whole debate on whether or not you draft the guy who's the safe bet or the guy who has the higher ceiling, but in my opinion, Brady Tkachuk just doesn't have that really high ceiling that other guys like Zadina, or even a defenseman like a Boguest or a Hughes, has. If you want to take a look at a really interesting comparison made, I saw this post here on Reddit, you guys are seeing it on your screen right now, Brady Tkachuk versus Matthew Tkachuk. Both of them played for the US development team at the same age, and at this age, Matthew Tkachuk had 95 points in 65 games with 114 penalty minutes, and Brady Tkachuk had a whopping 41 points less in 4 less games with 129 penalty minutes. Now, of course, you could talk about the teammates that each of these guys had that could have directly influenced the production of both of these guys, but if we go into their draft years, Matthew Tkachuk had 107 points, 80 penalty minutes, and a plus-minus of 45 playing for the London Knights. Now, of course, he was playing with Dvorak, Marner, Juolevi, Bouchard. That was a stacked team, but at the same time, in 40 games for Boston this year, Brady Tkachuk had 31 points with 61 penalty minutes and was a plus 15. So, just looking at the numbers, purely based on the numbers, it doesn't necessarily look like Brady Tkachuk is a guy who we could definitely say was better than his brother Matthew. Sure, he's more physical, he gets more in the other players' faces, he's a little bit more aggressive in terms of how he plays, but in terms of the skill and the production, Matthew seems like the better bet here. even the first comment on this Reddit post talks about how Brady Tkachuk is overrated, and guys playing in the NCAA on similar lines with similar production are not getting the amount of hype as a Brady Tkachuk because Tkachuk has that last name. Now, I think, personally, that's a little bit far-fetched, but at the same time, it's totally understandable. If Brady Tkachuk wasn't last named Tkachuk, would he have been in this ranking that a lot of people have? Would the Hockey News still have him at 3rd overall? So, it's a very interesting point to bring up, and I totally think it's unfair that a lot of these guys who are in a similar boat to Brady Tkachuk aren't getting nearly the amount of praise that Brady is because of, well, they're not named Tkachuks. So, what exactly is it with me that sparked this video entirely? Well, it's honestly just been the rankings. And a lot of people talking about Brady Tkachuk as if he's going to be the next great American goal scorer. He's going to be like his dad and everything, when really, he's not particularly as good as even his brother Matthew. Just taking a look at the numbers of players and everything, to me it doesn't seem like Brady Tkachuk is going to develop into that 60-70 point two-way beast that a lot of people are thinking that he will. And that's just my personal opinion. So you're fair to disagree, you can talk about things in the comments, and obviously, you know, I'm kind of at fault here too. I'm judging him based off of one season in college where he was 18, playing with guys who are 20 plus, and comparing him to his brother who's already had 2 years in the NHL, and who's only 20 years old himself. So obviously, I'm not necessarily the guy to sit here and be like, yo, I know everything about hockey, but at the same time, I do have an opinion, which is why I'm sharing it. Also, there's the whole idea to me that speaks volumes that just the guys in the draft that could get drafted before Tkachuk, in my opinion, just have higher ceilings. And of course, this is an entirely different battle. This is a philosophy battle. Do you take the guy who's better now, or who is the safer pick, over the guy who has less of a likelihood to reach his highest potential, but who has a higher potential? Really, it's just a crapshoot at this point. But in my opinion, Hughes, Boqvist, Zadina, Wahlstrom, these are 4 guys that I would pick above Tkachuk. I'd have Tkachuk down there at 7th. On my own personal draft rankings, and I know a lot of other people have him there as well. So it kind of boggles my mind just how a lot of high-profile drafting peoples have Tkachuk as high as 3rd overall. I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see him at 4th either. I don't necessarily see the value in Tkachuk over a Hughes or a Boqvist, and honestly, it really does depend on the team's needs, yes, of course, but just on a pure draft rankings perspective, I don't have Tkachuk in the top 5. Don't get me wrong, I see him as a player who makes the NHL and maintains an NHL career, but I don't see him as that high-profile two-way scorer that a lot of people do. Sure, he'll get into battles, he'll get more penalty minutes than his brother, but his brother maxed out at 40-something points in the Calgary Flames lineup a few years in a row. So, what is it to say that Brady Tkachuk is any better, especially considering the fact that Brady Tkachuk, in his younger days, hasn't even matched up to Matthew's success with the US development program and in their draft years? Of course, though, this is all my opinion. You guys are free to discuss in the comments what I'm getting wrong about Brady and or Matthew Tkachuk. Share your opinions and whatnot, that's what the comment section is for anyway, but this is just me giving my opinion on a player that I've seen a few times. I don't think Brady Tkachuk is a top 6 worthy player. He might get taken there because that's where a lot of people have him, but the fact that people have him there is kind of ridiculous to me, because I don't think you should be prioritizing safety over skill. Because, in my opinion, I'd take any one of the other guys. Zadina, yes. Boqvist, Hughes, and Wahlstrom, yes. Hands down, I'd take these guys over Tkachuk for my NHL team. Once again, though, this isn't a knock. I said that at the beginning of the video, this isn't a knock. I don't think that Brady Tkachuk is bad. I just don't think that he's at the level that people have him at. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I'd be pissed off if the Canucks grabbed him at 7th either. I said in my earlier videos talking about the draft, Dahlin, Svechnikov, Zadina, Boqvist, Hughes, Wahlstrom, Tkachuk. 7 players right there, which means that the Canucks have the opportunity, guaranteed, to take at least one of them. And I'd be fine with any one of these guys. If Rasmus Dahlin drops to 7th overall, hell yes, I'm okay with that. But in all seriousness, if the Canucks pick Tkachuk, yes, I'm good with that. Because I acknowledge that Tkachuk is a safe player, and he's a guy who will make an NHL impact, so if the Canucks grab him, sure, I'd be like, yeah, but we could have got somebody else who might have had a higher ceiling, but at the same time, I'm not the NHL scout. I'm not the guy sitting here drafting these players, so of course, just as a fan, I have to just take everything that the Canucks do, absorb it, and just hope that it turns out for the best. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you're plus, that's saying gaming, and bye.